Okay, Barchik mina utamina bechula bian Ivan Iserhoff nyamaga. Mina bechula mutawakana kanutayakutasi. Greetings all. Once again, we're here again on Facebook, me and Ivan Iserhoff. We're talking about the ground level activities we're doing up north. And I'm Edward Sutherland, those who don't know me. Edward Sutherland, Regional Engagement Coordinator of the Mushkegowuk territory. And my parents are from Kashatwan, my dad, my father, and my mother was from Madawaska. Her name was Bernadette Mitas-Bobbin, maiden name. Those who don't know me. I grew up in Kashatwan. I know my language and I speak it. And the method. Ivan Iserhoff, he's a mining coordinator, and I'll pass it to him.
Hey, what they go say in the Hannock? Ivan Iserhoff, Chicago. You want to go to those two? I come back a bit about the what I think. Niggas go. About the what Shuniana City mining, what they're taking out of our land. And I just want to thank Eddie. I just want to thank Ron for being behind the scenes there. That's putting this on. Thank you, Ron. And I'd like to thank Barb Duffin from GIS downstairs. I asked for a map just to show you visually of what's going on in our territory, and she so graciously made a quick map for me, and I thank her for that. Thank you, Barb. And one of the things I wanted to bring to light, you know, especially in the area of mining, because as you know, and as you're very well aware that what's happening in our territory, and you know, of course, the federal government's still out, the Liberals, Prime Minister Carney, and the Ontario government, Premier Ford, the Conservatives, and you know, within the last 4 or 5 years, there's been lots of pressure on our lands because of what contains underneath our lands. You know, I was telling Eddie when I was in Pioneer, I was reading a report from a person. I think it was from Port Albany. He was back in the early 1900s, so shortly after they signed the treaty and whatnot. He was a surveyor. And so I began to read, you know, what his job was. He was supposed to go to the land there, to measure it off, you know, to become a reserve. And when I was reading it, and it goes to show you the type of people we are. We're tough people. In the area we grew up in the swamp. We grew up in places where these white people will never go. And you know, when I was reading it, he couldn't finish the job because the land was too rough. There was lots of swamp and everything. He couldn't get by, so I was reading his journal. So he didn't complete that. And it rather made me proud because, you know, these type of people, there's a ton of people in the dog and tough people. You know, Washo grew up on tough land. Our parents, our great-grandparents, they grew up, you know, on this land, and that's all they knew. They didn't know things were, you know. They might, you know. I hear stories too of elders telling us they see stuff in the rivers too, in the creeks, glittering stones and stuff like that, you know. But they don't touch it, you know. They just leave it because it's part of the land. But as you know, when they signed our treaty, they had an Ontario representative along with the federal Indian agent, I call him, I guess basically that's what he was. And that was the open door for Ontario when they signed our treaty. But that being said, you know, I just want to bring you around from a global view. Even though a lot has been happening to us on our land, on our traditional lands, You know, it's the global pressures that bring the pressure to us directly. I just wanted to touch upon what's hardly being in the news anymore is the Russian-Ukraine war. When we first heard it, you know, the invasion of Russia into Ukraine, you know, big Russia, little Ukraine. You know, we heard a lot of it the first couple of years of that war. But now it's been, what, 4 years now? It's hardly in the news anymore. And you know, when you look at the statistics of the people being killed there, these are soldiers, Ukraine soldiers, small country. And, you know, the civilians too have taken its toll. And to the point that, you know, where Russian young people are deserting now because, you know, they're asking themselves, what's this war all about? Why am I going to invade Ukraine for? And if you were to do the statistics, it's alarming that the Russian soldiers are deserting at an alarming rate. And don't forget, this war too is using the latest weaponry, latest technology. You know, like who would have thought that drones would play such a major role in a war? But in this particular war, they have. Drones go out there, blow up things and stuff like that. You know, the drone is a multiple use device. And now, that being said, you know, Russia was a leader in exporting crude oil, and it's, you know, is a major global exporter, heavily reliant on energy, with fuels accounting roughly 63% of total shipments. As of May 2026, Russia continues to capitalize on high energy prices. And you know, and this morning, I was just telling Eddie the price of gold. As of this morning, $4,687.30 a U.S. ounce. That's in U.S. dollars. So our dollar right now it's not doing too good. It's roughly about 75, 76 cents on the world market. So our strength is not good in our dollar. So that if you were to translate that into Canadian dollar terms, that 4,687 almost doubles because of the weakness of our dollar. So basically, you're paying almost $8,000 a U.S. ounce for gold here in Canada. And that for Canadian gold miners, it's advantageous for them because you know the price is so high. And so getting back to Russia. So you know, as you know, the prices they're one of the leading exporters and high energy prices, earning roughly $732 million per day from oil, gas, and coal. Imagine that, $733 million a day Russia is making. That's 24 hours from these natural resources that they're exporting. Key exports include crude oil, petroleum products, natural gas, metals, wood, and fertilizers, with China, Turkey, and India being the top partners. So that's those three countries, China, Turkey, and India. That's their main exporting partners. And if you were to look at it, and if you were to look at Ukraine, what they exported their products, Ukraine's top exports are dominated by agricultural products. So, you know, theirs is slightly different than Russia. Notably corn, seed oils, wheat, and rapeseed. Alongside iron ore, they do have a little bit of natural resources. The European Union, particularly Poland, Spain, Germany, alongside China, Egypt, are the primary destinations for these goods. Okay, here's my point. With this war going on like for 4 years now, and they were one of the main exporters in their fields, like for Ukraine, it was out mainly agricultural products. And for Russia, it was mainly crude and, you know, like oil-based products themselves. And so after 4 years of fighting, and they continue to fighting, there's no sign of peace yet. even though Trump and everybody is trying to pressure him politically to come to the table and sign a peace treaty. But you take away these products during a war, somebody else has to pick up the slack of what they're not exporting now. And so if you were to look at our country now, it creates pressures, like I said, in other countries to produce more. And now I'm trying to single it down to Canada and what's been done here within the last, say, 4 years within the time frame of that war. So, you know, they've Bill 5, both federal and provincial, passed their legislations, you know, to fast track mines. You know, usually it takes right from the get-go and to the finalization of a mine, it usually takes about 15, 20 years, but they want to fast track that and cut it in half. That's why you got these legislation barreling through and very minimal, you know, response from the Canadian public. They had their minds made up. Sure, they're gonna, you know, consult with the Aboriginal people and whatnot, but their mind was made up. They were gonna put it through regardless what we said. But you know, that, and getting back to what I was saying, this creates direct pressure from global pressure, and it comes down to us in our land and what they want, and the very what do you call it, resources that they want to extract. And I guess no doubt, you know, a lot of you heard about the Ring of Fire. And during those legislation that we're putting through, one of the legislation is isolating a project, and it's called a special economic zone, which the federal government will, you know, takes a look at all the existing mines and what's happening. So this creates pressure for us on our land. And that's why, you know, like I said, these legislation comes through. And when they do come to our land, they identify what they want. As of with the Ring of Fire, like I wanted to give you a total number of claims that are within our area now. It's escalated as of last year, there are more than 42, close to 43,000 claims within our area. The bulk of it being the Ring of Fire, and the other being Canada Nickel, which is close by here, Timmins. And you know, I'm proud to say that, you know, TTN played a major role in that, and their negotiating team, you know, and did an excellent job to where they do have a seat on the board. But I think I was talking with Ed yesterday, you know, very proud of the accomplishments of TTN. But, you know, I said we shouldn't stop there. If they're selling shares at prices that can be, you know, we bought it at, you know, on a good price, buy-in price, we should buy more. So that TTN will have another seat there, a second governing seat, and so forth and so forth. That, you know, you look at your long-range plans, that you don't settle for one seat, but you settle for 2, 3, 4, where you can have sway within your decision-making process within that mine. And so, you know, it's a start, and it's a good start, it's an excellent start. You know, and like I say, I'm proud of TTN, what they've done. They've come a long way. And, you know, I think they're leading the charge because Canada Nickel and the area that they are is supposed to be the largest. When I was reading yesterday, the largest nickel deposit in the Western world. So, you know, you do have a prolific future, as in the longevity and the lifespan of that mine. So, you know, TTN, and you're sitting good, and it's only going to get better. Because, you know what, the thing is, this world is getting more populated, creates more pressures with different countries who are major producers of you know, natural resources within their country. And And the thing is, when we come to our area here, I just want to show you a map here. It's already been, and it goes to show you all our communities and all James Bay and Hudson Bay. And you'll see this here, where the line goes, that's the Mushkegowuk traditional territories. And as you know, the Ring of Fire, as I said before, it's only going to increase. It's only going to increase. It hasn't been classified as a special zone yet, because it's still ongoing. Whereas Canada Nickel here with TTN, they're getting their infrastructure started and everything. It's been classified. So what happens with different classifications when the federal government does classify you as a special zones, and you know you are given access to different types of funding. Also, I was looking at that, and these funding sources are into the billions for the for Canada Nickel to get access to and whatnot for different operational purposes and whatnot. So I commend our people. The more the more educated that we are into these areas, the better we'll get, and the better we'll utilize these resources to fight against people such as mining companies, not fighting physically, but to fight them on paper and with their regulations and whatnot. Knowledge is power, they say, which is very true. And if we don't know our facts on mining, from the permitting, from where the permits are given out, MNDM issues permits to people who wish to prospect in Ontario, but there are certain guidelines to that also. But I just wanted to get to the aside from the Ukraine-Russian war, I want to talk about which has affected us too. It's going to affect us if it hasn't already. Is the immigration. I checked the stats. There's over 1 million immigrants into Canada now. And what I didn't know, I thought they used that criteria like an immigrant is an immigrant. No, those are basic immigrants looking to be a landed immigrant into Canada, to becoming a Canadian citizen. But there are different classifications of other immigrants also. I didn't know that. So that million population that's coming into Canada increases due to these special categories for different other immigrants. So the number goes up. And this creates a lot of pressure. How are you going to house these people coming in? How are you going to employ these people coming in? And the other question is, you got to ask yourself, who are these people coming in? Because do we really know who's coming into this country? I lived in Toronto several years, and I lived in East York, where the Muslim people are, the East Indian. It was dominated by immigrants in East York. And I seen it day in and day out, their practices. There was a mosque down the street and everything. But during that time, I got to be friends. I traveled quite a bit working for De Beers at that time in Toronto, and I got to know this one cab driver. So I used them all the time. Called him all the time, same guy. And funny story, one particular morning, we would always talk on our way to the airport and whatnot. And this one particular morning, I knew he was in trouble. He's not himself, I said to him. So I asked him, "Hey, what's wrong with you? You're not yourself. You seem quiet. What's wrong with you?" He turned around and looked at me. He said, I guess when the immigrants come in, they sponsor, I guess, people that they know themselves. The immigrants themselves, they sponsor somebody to come from their lands. And so he was telling me, I sponsored a man, he says. He was quite upset. He was getting upset. Okay, yeah. You know what he says? He went and bought himself a lotto ticket Okay. And I guess it was the big one there. What you call the big one there?
Max.
Lotto Max.
Lotto
Yeah,
Max,
Lotto
yeah.
Max. Stick it out, see, but I think it's good. Ik heb mij ook niet sommige hadden we niet zo gedaan, sommige hadden we gewoon tegen de toch. Ik heb mij ook niet toch. Weet je nog, we zijn daar en we zijn daar en dat was een taxi. Weet je nog. He won $16 million. What? Come back. You're starting to get more upset than okay. He won 16 million. Wow. Then he looks at me again. He didn't give me any money. What's to me? But you know, things like that. You know, like. And I begin to hear stories that, you know, like the immigrants coming in, and it does create pressure because living in Timmins, we see it now. The onslaught of the, you know, of the population increasing, and we see the Mussolini slowly, and so you know and it's one of the conditions too is you know part of the immigration. Policy, what they wanted to do was send immigrants to northern communities, you know, Geraldton, stuff like that, you know, and what they're going, hey, to populate the northern, you know. But it's not working because of what they're doing. They're staying in big city centers, Toronto, Ottawa, you know, like. And if you were to go to Brampton, study Brampton, for you and I to go buy a house there, we have to have permission even just to be in that neighborhood. So this is Canada. But you know, and all these pressures, you know, it creates, I guess, things within our traditional territory. That's what I want to get at slowly. All these world pressures slowly get to us. For what we have in the ground is very precious. You know, we got chromite, we got iron ore, we got gold, we got silver, you know, all these types of minerals that want to be extracted and used by the Canadian government. And so, I just wanted to let you know, like, to come and speak of what's, you know, then later on we'll build what we speak. Eddie and I will be on again at another time, you know, like we want to be on consistently to bring forth, you know, what's happening in our territory, not only in our territory, which is important, yes, but what's happening outside our territory. What's happening with Carney? What's he doing? What's Rob Ford doing? You know, what's the world leaders doing? Because it does affect us. The Iranian war, as you very well know. You know, the export of petroleum, the export of oil. Iran. You know, the reason why Trump is afraid of Iran is, and not afraid, but it's through their atomic energy they have a program where they can become a nuclear power, which is very, very scary. You know, it shouldn't be scary. It shouldn't only be scary to Trump, but it should be scary to you and I, because it does affect us if they do, you know, have enough, you know, for nuclear arms buildup. So, you know, things like that, these things we have to take into account, you know, like I said, the global look, then you bring it down to the, you know, within our confines, with looking into Canada, what's Canada doing? Then it comes to us, First Nations people. Then the questions we got to ask ourselves: are we preparing ourselves? You know, I with our leadership here, Eddie, you know, like starts with Vern. You know, Vern Chichu is our boss, and you know, Ryan Small, and you know, and Lawrence Martin is the director of Lands Resources, and I truly respect our leadership on down. You know, like it's a hard area because of what's happening now, and it's only going to get harder. It's not going to get any easier. And so, you know, like we pray for our leaders. You know, those our chiefs, our Mushkegowuk chiefs. you know, that God be with them and you know, and to show them, you know, and to strengthen them, because it's not easy being a leader. Because, you know, as you know, in our communities, when we there's always divisions within our communities, you know, and I'm being realistic and I'm being honest when I say that. And if only we can, you know, like come together and unify, we'd be strong. And when that happens, I'm not just talking about our chiefs, I'm talking about our people. When we become strong. You know, I live here in Timmins on 6th Avenue, and I see our young people. I see our young people in the conditions that they're in. I try to do what little I do, I can to help. Give them socks, coats, stuff like that during the winter. You know, during the summer, you try to give them food and stuff like that. You know, on a hot day, you could take them to the store, buy them water, stuff like that. You know, we do our little to help our people, but we need to do more. We need to become more educated in areas that'll really lift up our people, strengthen our people. I commend our Grand Chief and our Deputy Grand Chiefs, you know, Leo, Natasha, and what's his name?
Amos was.
Yeah, and Amos too, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we have to support, you know, our Grand Chiefs and our Deputy Grand Chiefs. It's a difficult job, as it is to lobby for the government. Because many times the government doesn't agree with us. They want what we have. You know, they want what we have, and they're going to do certain things to disregard our rights, disregard our treaties, our inherent rights. You know, stuff like that. So we're in a time where we're going to be challenged. Then this is where we have to be unified, strong, one voice, one stand. If we're fragmented, that's when the government, you know, starts to see that. They know if we're fragmented, they know if we're weak, you know, they're not stupid. They've been at this game a long time, you know, and but like I said, you know, the permits are going to continually be given out, and to the point where, you know, like we're going to see Canada Nickel, we're going to see the fruit of TTN's labor and sweat. And, you know, like I say, you know, Chief Bruce Archibald and his crew over there, you know, they did a good job the last few years, you know. You know, and really proud of the crew that they have there. Stan, he's an elder now, Stan Sutherland, you know. Yeah, he's a good friend of mine, Stan, and Dwight Sutherland there too, you know, Lands Resources. You know, they worked hard these last few years to get to where they are, and a lot of sweat, a lot of meetings. And you know, I just urge TTN, you know, to keep winning. You know, what you've done so far is excellent, but don't stop there. Make it better. That you set the tone for Aboriginal people here in Canada, what Indians can do when they get together and agree what they can accomplish. So, you know, I'm very proud of that. I'm happy, you know. And so, but like I said, you know, the total permits, so far, when I counted them, aside from doing my yearly expenditures and budgets and whatnot, I do the claims as well. On the average, for the last, say, 4 or 5 years within our area, when I average it out, it's almost about 95 claims a year. 95 claims. Yeah, you know, those claims are, when I look at my reports from the last 4 or 5 years. Yeah, right here. And so you see all the different areas there north where they're going in, Moose Creek, New Bay. There's a couple of websites too I want to leave you with that are really good. I've checked them out, and you'll see who's who in our territory there. It's all mapped out and everything. The maps are excellent. It'll show you the number of claims within the area there. It's all blocked. So it'll give you a bird's eye view as to any information that you should. And so, you know, they're coming on. And I think now, you know, with the legislation making it easier to fast track mines, to fast track projects, it's only going to get more hectic as we go along, and that's why I think, you know, like as Mushkegowuk, you know, like we're slowly getting our birds in order. You know, we have strong leadership. You know, we have good people in key positions, and you know, I really admire that. You know, like. And that reflects on us, you know, Eddie and myself, with the type of jobs we do. We want to do our best because it's for the people of Mushkegowuk. You know, it's for you people that we're doing this. I love doing what I'm doing because it helps us. It helps the fight for the Mushkegowuk people. It doesn't matter where you are. Washoe, you know, doesn't matter. It's going to affect us the same way. Because a lot of us still like going on the land. When I'm home in Piwanik, I love going on the land, like just to get lost in the land, you know. And because it's hard here in Timmins to go fishing. There's no good place really. Fishes are polluted. The birds are no. Forgive me, Lord. But you know that. Even my friends, they call, you know, do you kill moose? I don't want to kill moose over here because they spray it. There's, you know, all that, you know, like.
I'll ask you two questions.
Oh no.
Okay. These are two. I'm going to ask the mine advisor. Ivan Iserhoff 2 questions. What does MMGM stand for?
Oh, okay, Ministry of Development Northern Mines.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have, I guess, you know, they have regional offices. We, Eddie and myself, and we met with the worker there on Friday. He's I guess he works for MNDM in South Porcupine, and so we're starting to slowly build a relationship with them too, like information exchange, stuff like I think that, you know, he's even signed up for one of our conferences. Yeah, he did. He signed up for I forget what conference, but he's all signed up. So we had.
Another question. Can you show us the process of doing a mine claim? A process of what do they do? What do they do?
Right from the get-go, there's a process instituted by the Ministry of Development, Mines, and the Mining Act. And in order for you to file a claim, you have to take a prospector's course. Without that prospector's course from NDM, who issues those type of courses, you cannot file a claim. You have to take that, then once you pass that course, you're giving, I took that course, I have my prospector's license, and so you take a 2-3, depending on the instructor, but you take a 1-2 day course, introduce you to minerals, how to, you know, the classification of claims, how to, when you go out in the bush, how to cut a claim and everything, you know, you tab it with your claim number and everything. So from there, then one can be accessible too. This is one thing, I'll be honest with myself, I never did like the concept of online staking.
Yeah.
Where people you could sit at your house, you could sit wherever in your office in Toronto. I haven't taken the course, I haven't been recognized as a mining company and whatnot. You could basically file a claim from your office in Toronto, downtown Toronto.
In China.
Yeah.
In China.
Even in China too. Even as long as you got a Canadian address. And here's one of the things. So I'm glad you brought up China, because you know, one of the criteria too with the Bill C5 is that, you know, they're very I guess conscientious of who's investing. And of course, you have worldwide investors. So part of that legislation now, you know, like we know there's people who support terrorism, stuff like that. You know, they support Hamas and whatnot, and these are the funders that they want to be aware of, because you know what, these funders could be raising money for terrorism, you know, and certain activities that are not lawful, you know. Yeah. And that's happened, you know. Yeah, you got the mafia in there too. They got their fingers in there, you know, stuff like that. And so that what they want to do is review the, I guess, that criteria, which is good. But like you say, you need a prospector's license to eventually to get access to prospecting in Ontario. So, like I said, I never liked that idea. I was always opposed to it when it first came out, like online staking. Because you know what, there's a lot of economics too that are taken away from the First Nations too, you know, and that sort of gets me also. Like, but what I wanted to say too, if you wanted to have Eddie and myself come up to your community, we can do an in-depth, what do you call it, presentation to your community where you can get more in-depth, more defining information that'll be useful for you. And there's two websites there I want you to look at that are very good that I looked up. If you want to look for maps, there's a place called the Northern Miner. They have interactive maps there, and one of the maps is, I think when I was there, was Northern Ontario. They have different different parts of Canada and whatnot, but they have Northern Ontario. Take a look at Northern Ontario. It's like this. It'll define what this map is. It'll give you a true definition as to the growth of the permits, say in the Ring of Fire area. Then in different areas too, they're starting to develop. So you can go to your own community area, Moose Cree. If you're a Moose Cree band member and you're listening in, so you could check what's going on in that area. I heard it's a good. I don't usually recommend websites and whatnot, but I do recommend this one, the Northern Miner, and there's one, Ring of Fire /assessment/ interactive maps. That's another good site, like to look for mining claims in your area and whatnot, because it shows right across everything here in Ontario. It's very definitive, and it'll answer your question. And as I close here, I just want to thank.
I got a question.
Oh no, another one.
Just for our viewers, who's out there right now? Who's out and about on the land? Mining companies or prospectors or export companies?
Like with the mining companies, and with that, that's a good question, Eddie, because with these websites there, on each little claim there, you could put your mouse there. It'll tell you on each claim who's the mining company. Mm-hmm. Usually, the big boys up in up in Ring of Fire, Snow-Oront, and Wailu, and and so it'll identify who is the major player within the permitted area. And so I'm glad you brought that up, Eddie. And I do urge you to look at these websites because it'll identify who the mining companies are. Like I said, there's big boys that the major players, but there's there's other companies as well that you haven't heard about, and but like you say, go to these websites and then it'll give you an identification of the mining company, who they are, where they're from, and so I guess I urge you, and if you want to ask questions, Ron's taking a look at it. Whosoever will ask a question, we'll get back to you. Well, if you can leave, perhaps if you want to ask a question, leave your email. We can get back to you with all the, the type of information that we have. And if we don't know, we'll get it for you. Because we don't know everything.
I got another one going.
What? I should be the next four now.
I got to ask another question to Ivan. He's a mining advisor. He's aware of what's going on the land, our territories. So I'm going to ask him, how do mining companies engage in First Nations? They do engage, or they're not, or they have the power to oversight all the engagements?
Okay, that's a very good question, Eddie. Many years ago there was a Supreme Court decision it came out, and it came out of Manitoba. In fact, it was funny, where the Supreme Court case came out of in Manitoba, Alberta. It talked about consultation and touching base with the local people as to what you're going to do in the area. And I just happened to be went to this conference, several years ago, and when I went into that hall there, it was all filled. There was only one. It was funny. There was one seat available, and there was like this right by a corner. So I walked over there. There was another Aboriginal guy sitting beside me. So we got to talking, and it was pretty full there. So. And he was. Then once we introduced ourselves, who we worked for, and everything, he said he was one of the ones that initiated that class action against Manitoba. I think it was Manitoba Hydro or what, for that case. And so I got to know him, and he told me about it. And that's exactly the thing is that they were mining companies, whereas before they would just go on the land and wherever their mining claims were, they would do work without consulting the neighboring First Nation when that. And that's how that came about, he says, because they were infringing on our trap lines, and they didn't even tell us that they were cutting lines through it and everything. It's until we had to find out ourselves, we seen it, and that's when we did something about it. And so, that Supreme Court decision that came out several years ago now it's obligated up to the company to initiate contact with the First Nation, where they're immediately working in the area. And so it's part of the process now. It's law. Even though at the beginning there were a lot of gray areas as mining companies, that was my job too. To initiate contact with First Nations and to have meetings and to develop a relationship with the First Nation community, so that we can eventually go to the properties that that are out there that we wanted to look at. And if it's done right, it will work. And it depends on a lot of times too. I find it depends on who they have as a liaison officer. And if they don't know anything about us, and they don't know what our lifestyle is, they don't know how we interact with the land, they don't know we still have the seasons where we go hunting, we have seasons for this and that, the spawning. See, they don't know all that. And that's why it's important that when they do come to your community, you list everything. This is what our community is all about. And you're here to listen to us. Yeah. We're not here to we're not here to listen to you to dictate to us what we're going to. No. Those days are long over now. Yeah. As Aboriginal people, we begin to say, hey, it's enough now. And I believe, like myself too, in speaking and voicing what we have for our people. At these levels of meetings, for me, it always gets back to the people, our people. It doesn't matter where you're from. In our Mushkegowuk area, you're still a First Nations person that goes out onto the land, that likes to go fishing, hunting, trapping maybe. You still want to maintain that area of your life, and you should. And when mining companies come into your area and they have a community meeting, I urge every one of you guys, you should go out to these meetings and meet these people and tell them exactly how you feel. This is our land. We've been stewards. God put us over this land for thousands of years to take care of it, to nurture it, and that's the thing. Mining companies are obligated by that Supreme Court decision, whereas they have to consult with the First Nation people in the immediate area. But you know, there's dangers of that too. You know, like you might leave out secondary communities that are close by that are impacted, but not as much impacted as this community. I believe we should all work together because despite the impact, it's impact, and it affects all of us. You know, and when I was working for Anglo American out of Vancouver, you know, and there's this one quote I'll never forget. An elder, he come and talked to me after the meeting was over. He said, you know, and you know what impact is, Ivan? He says, what's that? I told him. Even when you put a shovel in the ground, he says, that's impact. Because you moved the earth, that's impact. And that's always stayed with me, Eddie, you know, like, even all through all those years. And, yeah, of course, there's funny stories of, you know. So we were in northern Manitoba there, and I think it was Oxford House, because we went to God's River and God's Lake, and we went to several communities during that time, and after we're meeting with Cuban Council at Oxford House, Ivan, hasta visto, he come back. You say you're from Manila, your parents from Manila? Yeah. If you want to get told me. You know what, he says? I think he was an elder at that time, and then he says, you know, my grandfather was from Mushkegowuk at Oxford House. What? I thought he never went back in time. I was sticking school. When this guy says, oh, my Oxford House, I'm Manitoba. You're gonna laugh at this. You know, I worked for non-legal services, you know, for several years, and I traveled all the communities. Then Catholic. Okay, yeah. So I went there. His name was Wilfred Wesley, and he had a brother named Gerald Wesley. So I looked at Wilfred the first time I seen him. I looked at old man Wilfred there. Hey, I said, looked at him long, and can I tell you something? I told him. You wanted to. You look like you're from Cash, I told him. You know what, he says, it was my grandfather that was from Cash. He came this way and never went back. He said, you look like you were from Cash again, you know? What's that? You know, because my grandfather from Cash. So there's wanderers out there. I never came back. You know, like I say, you know, like there's a lot that goes into when it actually affects us. It has that trickle effect, you know, and like I said, I like to bring things globally, and you shrink them down to where it affects us, and how the stuff that, you know, the minerals and the extraction that they're taking out of the ground will affect the world by exporting these products, you know, and like I say, check out those websites, and you know, if you have any questions, ask Ron, Eddie, or myself, and you know, we'll gladly get back to you. If we don't know it, we're gonna find the answer for you.
I got another for you.
What?
I got another one for you.
You won't take it?
For our viewers that who want to know more about rivers, the damming of rivers, the impact that will do in the Ring of Fire or in your Danger area, how you foresee the damming of rivers, the Winnis, the Robustet, Albany, Egwin.
What
do you think?
You know what? My personal thought is this. You know, like for these mines to go up, you need power sources, and I like reading the old reports. I read a couple different reports. Ontario Hydro. One was from 1925.
Mm-hmm.
Even as early as then, they were looking at power sources. they were looking at our rivers. That one report from 1925, and they were looking at you guys' river.
Yep, Albany, yeah.
Albany River, you got to hand down this, you know, in 1925. So even before 1925, they were talking about power sources. Before was in 1925, ano tolerance CBA, Kego CBA. They can always got there. Which rivers are we going to look? So as you know, on the Moose River, we have a dam there, and that killed that Moose River. For me, you know, for me personally, you know, the rivers, as Eddie will agree with me, is our life, our lifeline. Those are our highways, the rivers. They feed us with fish. The rivers feed the animals that come down to drink at the Homosa. And you know, our waterfowl, our birds depend on these rivers and water areas. So if you destroy our waterways that are so vital to us, just to get power, to power a mine. So in essence, if that goes through, it'll destroy us. That's one of the things I'm really afraid of. In Pioneer, we have our Winnisk River. It's directly goes all the way up to Webcast. Then I've asked these people, and I don't seem to be getting an answer. What happens to us? Should something drastic happen to our river, pollutants or whatever, you know, things will seep into our river. We use that river, people use that river. You know, we go 8 hours up that river. We're still in our territory. So what's going to happen to us, Eddie? You know, what's going to happen to you? Say, you know, your Albany River, something should happen. And as you know, they're trying to make a road, Martin Falls, Webcast, you know, and they're trying to connect, you know, like to connect their way to Webcast to extract, to bring out all the minerals from there. And so what's going to happen then? Something like Martin Falls, that's the beginning of your river.
Yep, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
And so if something should happen there, it'll kill that river, kill your Albany River. You know, and part of this Bill C5 too is, and as I said, they want to fast track mines. Say from 20 years, they want to fast track it, cut it in half to 10 years. Full infrastructure, everything ready to go by 10 years. So, you know, without the critical environmental assessment, basically when an environmental assessment is just taking what's on the land, what's, you know, talking to the people, the socioeconomic, every type of thing that'll affect that particular area. That's what your environmental assessment is. So they want to cut down on those environmental assessments. There's certain key areas there that they want to cut out and fast track it. And so, you know, like, and like I say, Eddie, you know, like, we have to support our leaders.
Yeah.
You know, they're not going to please everybody. You know, like being a chief, you're not going to please everybody. You're bound to rub somebody the wrong way, right? Ruffle some feathers, you know, and but the thing is, you know, I know it's hard being a chief, but if you're doing the right thing for your people, then you know you're going to get the backing of the people. Not only your immediate people, but people like us, Eddie and myself, that, you know, that do work, that keep tabs, that go out to the communities, map making, get to meet you guys. You know, I love doing that, and but like I say, it comes down to the band member. You guys, your voice, you have to be heard. You know, you're the ones that put the X on the voters' ballot there. You know, you vote your leader in, but you know, you should voice your opinion, because you count as well. You count. Your opinion counts, and it's important. I feel it is in a way important that everybody voices their opinion, and that we gather together to be strong in what we say. Sure, we may not agree this and that, you know, but that doesn't mean we split. It should make us stronger, because we're trying to look for an answer, a common resolution, so that make us stronger than make us more cohesive. And so, and the other thing I was going to mention too, Eddie, if I haven't already, like that's enough questions now, okay?
Okay, no more.
Six questions now. You're going to start to cost you now. But if you want us to come to your community, we're more than happy because I'm setting up some community meetings and within the coming May, June. So by the time I go home to Pionic, it should be a breakup. Yeah. So I give it to you.
There's a casting.
There's a casting. Yeah. So if you want us to come up, we can get into the very acts too. Bill C5, Bill 5. We can explain all that, the process. Then you'll see what the government is doing, and how, and why they want all these minerals in our lands so bad. And I just want to thank the man over there behind the scenes, Ron Gresh. He's our communications guy. Does a terrific job. Thank you, Ron. Mm-hmm. And if you should have any questions, write them down, and get a hold of us, Ivan Iserhoff at Mushkegowuk or Edward Sutherland at Mushkegowuk. Let us know, like if you have any questions. Let Ron know if you have any questions. And, we'll get back to you. And like I said, if you're interested, if you work in a band, if you're interested in having us come up and visit, and give out some numbers and educate people on what's happening in the mining area, and especially in your backyard. Because we're going to be affected sooner or later. Next 20 years, you're going to see the greatest change in our area, the greatest change to come because of the world pressures, as I said. All right, Eddie, I just want to thank you for having me on here, and and don't forget, I just got there's 2 websites: Ring of Fire / assessment / interactive map. So that's one good website there, and the other one is the Northern Miner. So if you go to those sites, it'll give you everything you need to know, and any type of maps that'll appeal to you, it's there. And I don't like recommending websites, but these are the ones I would recommend. Because I've been there myself. It'll give you good information, a bird's eye view on how many permits are in your area and whatnot. So it's like I said. Thank you, Eddie, for having me on, and God bless everybody. Keep safe, and to the evacuees, all my friends in Cash and Albany that are in Niagara Falls, what there? Johnny Wynn, my buddy Johnny Wynn. I heard he's in Facebook jail. Is that what happened? Well, Johnny, if you're still in jail there, we're waving high. Yeah. All right. I get to be with everybody. God bless you all, right?
So that's Ivan Iserhoff, mining advice for Mushkegowuk Council. As you hear, that we can come into the community. Minamaga research activities like visit and